Hello.
Hosted by the DC Office of Campaign Finance. I'm Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher and owner of the Washington Informer, and will serve as the moderator for tonight's discussion or debate. Due to a last-minute addition, we're hosting the second debate to give all of the candidates an opportunity to answer questions and to share their views with the voters. Tonight, we will hear from David Schwartzman, a candidate competing for the office of DC Council Member at Large. We encourage members of the public to submit questions via the website, dcdebates.com, and to participate online using the hashtag DCDebates. Before we get started, let's hear from the Director of the Office of Campaign Finance, Cecily Montgomery.
Good evening. Welcome to the 2022 DC Fall Debate. I'm Cecily Montgomery, Director of the Office of Campaign Finance. The 2022 DC debates are the third slate of debates under the Fair Elections Program. Started in 2018, the FEP is a voluntary public financing program operated by the Office of Campaign Finance to support candidates for local political office in the District of Columbia. All FEP participating candidates for citywide races are required to take part in the debates. It is our hope that these debates will help the public to learn more about the candidates, their positions, and policy platforms. We want to take a moment to thank our partner organizations and the candidates for participating in the process. Thank you for joining us in our mission to help inform DC voters about the Fair Elections Program candidates and their positions. To learn more about the Office of Campaign Finance or the 2022 DC debates, please visit dcdebates.com. The debates will remain on the website through Election Day, November the 8th, for those who could not watch or listen live this evening. Thank you for your support, and with that, let's meet our candidates.
And thank you, Ms. Montgomery, for those remarks. The candidate for tonight's debate is David Schwartzman. Here are the ground rules for tonight's debate. You will have 1 minute for an opening statement, 60 seconds for an answer to a question, and, well, I guess you don't need 30 seconds for a rebuttal because you won't need it. You will have 1 minute for closing statements. With that, we will proceed with your opening statement, Mr. Schwartzman.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm David Schwartzman, the candidate of the DC State Green Party, the only ballot status party which does not accept funding from the corporate developer sector. I'm a retired Howard University professor, a climate scientist, and human rights activist. I first ran for office in DC in 1998 and several times since, and my priority then and now is the elimination of child poverty in our nation's first human rights city, which is an achievable goal given our more than adequate tax base. For more than 20 years, I have advocated for a progressive DC tax structure, for more taxes paid by our wealthy residents. And last summer, the people of DC won a major victory with the hike in the tax rates paid by wealthy residents. And this, as a result, low-income residents will get a big increase in their DC earned income tax credit.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartzman. Your 1 minute time is up.
Okay,
so,
thank you. More
right.
for the closing
So we're going to
statement.
move on
Thank you.
to our opening question.
Yes.
Many DC voters, and often those that run for this office, understand the role and responsibility of a council member, and in this case, an at-large member, differently. Please share what you believe your role will be and what constituents should expect from you when you win the seat.
Yes, indeed. Well, of course, an at-large council member will represent the whole DC, all of DC, and I intend to do so. And I intend to use the full resources of my office, the full resources, including my salary, which, because I don't need the salary, I have Social Security and a pension from Howard University. I will use it to organize with, in collaboration with the cutting edge groups in DC that are fighting for a more just DC to eliminate the huge racial and economic disparities we have in DC. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, uh, Mr. Schwartzman, recently the DC Council approved an emergency creation of the Office of Migrant Services in response to the high numbers of migrants who landed in DC in the last 6 months. Some advocates have expressed concerns that the law doesn't offer the same protections afforded to citizens experiencing homelessness. What would you put in place, or how do you plan to balance the needs of migrants sent from other states in the long term and the needs of the unhoused in DC?
Very good question. Well, I think we owe it to the migrants coming in who were dumped on us by the governors of Arizona and Texas. However, we should be treating them with equal regard as our own homeless. And DC is not adequately housing the homeless now. As a matter of fact, the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless had a critique of this bill, and they supported an amendment which unfortunately failed. But basically, their objection, which I share, is that it should be amended to protect the rights of immigrants and all people experiencing homelessness. And I invite viewers to go to the Washington Legal Clinic of the Homeless website and see the details of what should be amended. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to talk a little about crime. We know that DC residents have identified gun violence and crime as a top concern, and that they want the mayor and the council to focus on this more. What new ideas do you have to fight crime and address the interconnected issues related to crime in the city?
Yes, and I agree this is a vital concern to all residents. First of all, I think we need to address the roots of the problem, and that is, first of all, poverty and child poverty, the traumatized children that live in families that are experiencing poverty. Violence is a public health issue and should be addressed in that regard. And of course, the NEAR Act, which just got a boost in the budget, should be vigorously promoted. And also the recommendations of the DC auditor which call for the mayor to actually create the bodies that were required to enhance the operation of the NEAR Act. Finally, we need to address the abuse of some police, in harassing young Black youth and even killing them. And there's too sorry a record of that happening. And I support a civilian review board elected with subpoena power to address that issue. And I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. In that mode, the DC Council also voted earlier this year to gradually remove police from schools and to replace them with other resource persons. If that bill was introduced today and you were on the city council, would you support it? If so, why? And if not, why not?
Oh, yes, I would indeed support it. I think there needs to be some security for students going into school, so they don't bring in knives and guns. Yes, but we don't need police inside of school. And I agree with the other council members, the sitting council members, who also said yes, they would have supported that bill as well.
Thank you. Another, of course, very hot topic for Washingtonians, one of the second highest priorities, of course, has to deal with rent and affordable housing. The District of Columbia has very high rents, and voters are looking for some type of action that the council will take to address affordability of rental housing as well as um, um, housing in general. What would you do as a council member to address those issues?
Yes, as you indicated, the rents are too high. Market rents are not affordable for a majority of renters in DC. That's a reality. The Housing Production Trust Fund is I think, largely failed mechanism to create affordable housing. Yes, some is created, not enough for low income. As the auditor pointed out, the developers violate the law and they're not being held accountable. So we need to increase the minimum for low income first, but we need to move very fast to a different model. Housing is a human right, decommodifying housing, the provision of housing for social housing and community land trusts. Janice Lewis George's housing bill, Green New Deal housing bill, is a big step in that direction for social housing, and I certainly support that. And she is my council person, by the way. I live in Ward 4.
As a climate scientist, you are eminently qualified to deal with the most important issue facing humanity. How can your skills help DC in particular? And a second
Well, I'm
question
glad
is,
you
why do
mentioned
you?
that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead. No,
cut you
I'll
off.
follow up. I'll follow up. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed. I am a climate scientist and environmental scientist, but we need to connect the dots between environmental rights, human rights, economic and social human rights. They're interrelated. For example, the to curb the emissions of carbon, greenhouse gas emissions, such as even methane leaking out of the street from pipes carrying natural gas. We have to curb this, but at the same time, we need to curb the vehicle traffic in DC because it's not only a source of carbon emissions, it's a source of harmful air pollution, which impacts the young, asthma, it impacts the older folk with dementia. There's research to show that connection, and cancer and cardiovascular disease. So we need to connect the dots in confronting this challenge, and we will improve the quality of life of everyone. And one idea which I'm support is
Mr.
to
Schwartzman,
have
I need to move
congestion.
on to the next
Okay,
question. Thank you.
thank you.
And we appreciate the fact that the audience is submitting questions. So these are questions coming from our viewers.
Excellent.
And the second question is, why do you think DC needs a public bank?
Oh, I love that. That's a nice question. Because I've been on the steering committee of the DC Public Banking Center for over 7 years. We did have a feasibility study that was paid from the DC budget. It's not too bad, but we need to re-energize this project. And if you put me in office, I certainly committed to do so. Why? Because right now our revenue and fines that are collected, by the way, fines should be calibrated to income, not be the same for everyone, but they're being banked in Wall Street banks now. They're not doing us good. So a public bank would hold a publicly accountable bank. Independent politicians would hold this revenue and partner with local banks and credit unions to promote, for example, social housing, green jobs, and other benefits for the people of DC. And that's why we need a public bank. North Dakota has one. Other cities and states are really looking keenly into this. So
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's very important. Thank you.
One of the points that the other candidates mentioned was the need to provide affordable housing for district workers, police officers, firefighters, school teachers. What would you do? Do you support that idea? And as a council member, what would you do to make sure that that became a reality?
Well, I do support the idea, and I think the mechanisms that I already mentioned, social housing, community land trusts, could well serve to fulfill that role of housing these employees and attracting people, to live in D.C. rather than in the suburbs. Because if they live in the suburbs, they're not paying income tax to D.C. If they live here, according to home rule, of course, they are compelled to pay income tax, and the income tax needs to be progressive. So social housing is mixed income housing, but it requires that the rent be no more than 30% of household income. So it's a mix of income, and it could produce enough revenue to maintain the property, and people can save money as a result, especially low income, to then consider getting their own home with partnership with the government as well.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartzman. Believe it or not, we've actually come to the end of this debate. We want to thank you for taking time for being with us. The question and answer portion of the evening is over, and we will now provide you with an opportunity to give a closing statement. Remember, you have 1 minute to do so.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm not really debating anyone there. By the way, I'm a father, a husband, a grandfather, but that's not a reason to vote for me. Okay, that's not a good reason. Why you should consider voting for me, one of your two votes, is that I will be a fearless and vigorous fighter for human rights to eliminate the racial and economic disparities in our community. And I say that I will use the full resource of my office to make that possible. And my slogan is for the many, not the few. For the many, not the few. So that is really what I stand on. And I'm committed to end the displacement of long-term residents in DC and to have a truly equitable city, to move to real equality in DC so we don't have child poverty, we don't have homelessness, and so forth. Thank you.
Mr. Schwartzman, thank you very much. And that concludes our debate. So to learn more about how to vote in this election, visit dcboe.org. Again, that's dcboe.org. And remember to visit dcdebates.com to watch this debate and others in their entirety. Thank you to all of our candidates, our community partners, and the Office of Campaign Finance for hosting tonight's debate. Thank you, Mr. Schwartzman, for being here. Have a safe evening and good night.